Why we struggle with emotional reactions. Let's be honest. How many times have you walked away from a conversation or situation and thought, why did I react like that? Maybe it was a job interview where your nerves took over. Maybe it was a moment with a loved one where something small triggered something big inside you. In moments that matter most, we often feel the least in control. Our emotions hijack our clarity, our calm, and sometimes even our character. But here's something the Stoics understood long before modern psychology gave it a name. Our emotions are not enemies. They are messengers. They are signals, alerting us to something within us or around us. The problem isn't the emotion itself, it's what we do with it. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And yet, for most of us, this is easier said than done. Why? Because we're still running on the same emotional wiring as our ancestors. Our brains were built for survival, not serenity. Thousands of years ago, reacting fast could mean the difference between life and death. But today, that same wiring makes us overreact to a rude email, an awkward silence, or a judgmental glance. So what do we do with this ancient brain in a modern world? This is where Stoicism offers more than just ideas. It offers a daily practice. The Stoics didn't believe in suppressing emotions. That's a myth. They believed in mastering the space between stimulus and response, a space where we can pause, reflect, and choose. Not with coldness, but with clarity. Not by shutting down, but by stepping back. Imagine this. Instead of snapping back in anger, you take a breath. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, you ask, is this within my control? That's not suppression. That's wisdom in motion. So if you've ever felt like your emotions are driving the car and you're just a passenger, this video is for you. Together, we'll explore 10 simple yet powerful daily habits that can retrain your emotional reflexes. Not by fighting who you are, but by returning to who you truly are beneath the noise. Because when you respond with intention instead of reaction, you don't just change the outcome. You change your relationship with yourself. And over time, that changes everything. Now, let's begin with the first daily habit, and it starts before you even speak a word. Part 1. The Stoic Foundation of Emotional Mastery. Let me ask you a simple but important question. When something upsets you, what really causes the pain? Is it the event itself or your interpretation of it? The Stoics believed it's rarely the event that hurts us. It's how we perceive it, how we label it, how we react to it. And this single insight changes everything. Let's explore the Stoic foundation for emotional mastery, starting with a distinction most people never make. Emotion is not the same as reaction. You see, we often think that being emotional means we're losing control, that emotions themselves are the enemy. But that's not what Stoicism teaches. The Stoics didn't suppress emotions. They studied them. They observed them. And most importantly, they separated them from their responses. Because here's the truth. We can't always control what we feel, but we can always control how we respond. And that space between emotion and reaction is where your power lives. That's where maturity begins. That's where freedom is born. Let's say someone says something insulting to you. Your body flares up, tight chest, flushed face, quick breath. That's emotion. It's a signal, not a verdict. What happens next? That's the reaction. You could yell, withdraw, retaliate, or you could pause, breathe, choose, and respond from a place of strength. This ability to pause is the foundation of Stoic self-mastery. It doesn't come from pretending you don't care. It comes from realizing you do care, just not about being reactive. You care about being principled. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Now here's the second key principle. Emotions stem from judgments. What does that mean? Well, according to both Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, no event is inherently good or bad. It is our interpretation of that event that creates our emotional response. So when you feel disappointed, frustrated, anxious, pause and ask, what am I believing right now that is shaping this emotion? Am I assuming rejection, failure, injustice? Sometimes we're not reacting to what's actually happening. We're reacting to what we think is happening. And that distinction matters. Let's take an example. Your friend cancels plans last minute. You feel hurt, disrespected, maybe even angry. But what if your belief is, they don't care about me? Now you're not responding to the cancellation. You're responding to the belief that you're being devalued. And here's the liberating part. You can't always change the event, but you can examine the judgment and reshape the way you respond to it. This leads us to the most empowering idea of all, the power of choice. Between what happens and how you react, there is always a moment, a pause, a breath. And in that small space lies your greatest power, the power to choose your response. You can choose not to escalate. You can choose to speak with integrity. You can choose to let go instead of holding on to resentment. You can choose peace over proving a point. This power is not theoretical. It's deeply practical. It's something you can use today in the next difficult conversation, the next traffic jam, the next moment of doubt. The Stoics call this presence of mind prosouche, the active attention we bring to our thoughts, judgments, and reactions. Prosouche means being mentally awake, emotionally aware, morally anchored. It's the discipline of watching your thoughts like a wise inner guardian, not to shame them, but to guide them. And over time, when you build this discipline, something beautiful happens. You stop reacting from habit and start living from intention. You become less of a puppet to your emotions and more of a leader in your own life. You might be wondering, does this mean I'll never feel angry again? Never anxious? Never overwhelmed? Of course not. You're human. And Stoicism doesn't ask you to become a robot. It invites you to become more deeply human by learning how to carry your emotions without letting them carry you. You begin to see emotions not as enemies to conquer, but as messengers to understand. You realize that the goal is not to eliminate emotion, but to master your response. Because emotional mastery is not coldness, it's clarity. It's knowing what to do with what you feel. And that clarity over time becomes your inner peace. So here's your takeaway for today. You may not control your first emotion, but you always control your second thought. You may feel triggered, but you still have the space to choose how you respond. You may face chaos, but you can remain calm, not because you're numb, but because you're anchored. That's the Stoic foundation of emotional mastery, not the denial of emotion, but the quiet power to meet it with wisdom. Now, in the next part of this video, we'll go deeper. We'll explore 10 daily practices you can use to train your emotional responses and build true resilience, one habit at a time. Let's begin. Part 2, Daily Habits to Train Emotional Regulation. Master your emotions by mastering your habits. Let me offer you a gentle reminder. Emotional control is not a gift. It's a practice, a muscle you train daily. And just like physical fitness, emotional strength isn't built during the storms. It's built in the quiet moments leading up to them. If you've ever looked back at a moment and thought, why did I say that? Why did I let that get to me? You're not alone. We've all been there. But the solution isn't to be harder on yourself. The solution is to start training your nervous system, your mind, and your heart to work together, one small habit at a time. So let's explore 4 daily practices, simple but powerful, that the Stoics would have loved and modern psychology fully supports. Habit 1. Pause before you react. This one might seem obvious, but in the heat of the moment, it's often the first thing we forget. The Stoics called it the space between stimulus and response. And in that space lies the most powerful choice you'll ever make. Next time something triggers you, pause, just pause, take one breath. Name the emotion you're feeling. Is it anger, embarrassment, fear? By doing this, you disrupt the automatic loop. You break the emotional chain reaction. You move from impulse to intention. Here's a quick real-life example. Let's say your partner says something that hits a nerve. Instead of snapping back or shutting down, take a breath and internally say, I'm feeling disrespected. That tiny act of awareness pulls you back into the driver's seat because the goal isn't to suppress your feelings, it's to hold them and respond wisely. Habit 2, reframe your thinking. Our emotions are deeply tied to the stories we tell ourselves. A rude driver cuts you off in traffic. Your mind instantly says, they're a jerk. And suddenly you're tense, resentful, gripping the steering wheel like it wronged you. But what if you asked a different question? What if they're rushing to the hospital? What if they just got bad news? Reframing is not about being naive. It's about choosing the lens that keeps you grounded. It's about choosing the story that supports your peace, not sabotages it. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," and how true that is. By changing the story, we shift the emotional energy that flows through us. Try it today. Next time someone disappoints you, don't jump to judgment. Reframe. Compassion can often do what anger never could. Habit 3. Make values-based decisions. Here's a question to carry with you every day. Does this reaction align with my highest self? So often we react based on mood, not principle. But moods are like weather. They shift. Values are like the sun. They stay steady. When someone disrespects you, your emotion might scream, defend yourself, but your value might say, respond with dignity. And here's where character is forged, not in the emotion, but in the choice. Make it a daily practice to check in. Is this action aligned with wisdom? Is this word coming from courage or fear? Is this silence rooted in peace or avoidance? The Stoics believe that real power is moral power, the ability to act from virtue even when your emotions say otherwise. And when your reactions reflect your values, something incredible happens. You stop being ruled by the world, and you start living in alignment with something greater. Habit 4. Emotional acceptance. Let me say this clearly. Feeling something uncomfortable does not mean you're failing. Modern culture often tells us to stay positive, rise above, don't feel sad. But Stoicism is not about denial. It's about facing what is and moving through it with clarity. Think of emotions like weather patterns in the sky. They pass, they shift. They are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. So when you feel anxious, notice it, name it, let it breathe. When grief visits, welcome it like an old teacher. Listen, without judgment. Don't push it away. Don't cling to it either. Acceptance is not passivity. It's the most active kind of courage. The kind that looks inward and says, I can hold this feeling and still choose who I want to be. Emotional maturity begins where resistance ends. Now pause for a moment. Reflect with me. What would your life feel like if you practiced these four habits? Not once, but daily. If you built a reflex to pause instead of explode, to reframe instead of assume, to act from values, not moods, and to welcome emotion without fear, over time you don't just respond better, you live better, more grounded, more compassionate, more free. Because emotional mastery isn't about never feeling upset. It's about no longer being owned by what upsets you. So today, choose one habit, just one. Practice it gently, and tomorrow, return to it again. Consistency will shape what your reactions can't. In the next part, we'll continue with deeper habits, those that involve reflection, journaling, and even how to use discomfort to strengthen your emotional intelligence. Stick around. This journey inward is just beginning. Part 3. Stoic Benefits in Real Life. A calm mind doesn't just feel better, it builds a better life. Let's pause for a moment and reflect on this. What's the real purpose of emotional mastery? Is it just about feeling a little more peaceful, or is there something much deeper at stake? In truth, the Stoic path isn't about retreating into solitude or building emotional walls. It's about living more fully, with clarity, strength, and compassion in the real world, in your relationships, at your job, inside your own heart. When we train ourselves to respond rather than react, we begin to notice something extraordinary. Life starts to respond differently to us. Let's explore how emotional discipline doesn't just change how we feel. It quietly transforms how we connect, lead, and heal in everyday life. 1. Emotional maturity strengthens relationships. Every relationship, whether romantic, familial, or professional, is a mirror. It reflects back the level of emotional presence we bring into it. If we show up with insecurity, reactivity, or defensiveness, the connection suffers. But when we show up with calm, clarity, and intention, something shifts. Imagine this. Your partner says something triggering. Instead of immediately lashing out or shutting down, you pause, you breathe, you ask, what are they really trying to say beneath those words? That single moment of inner stillness creates space for understanding, not escalation. This is how emotional maturity builds trust, not by being perfect, but by being present, not by avoiding conflict, but by learning how to approach it without fear. Stoicism teaches us that relationships are not just about affection, they are about virtue. Can you be kind when you're angry? Can you be honest without being cruel? Can you hold space for someone's pain without losing your own center? These are the questions that build deeper bonds, rooted in mutual respect, not ego. Because the truth is, when your inner world is calm, your outer connections begin to thrive. 2. Composure is a professional superpower. Let's shift to another arena where emotional mastery pays off, your career. In today's fast-paced world, emotional reactivity isn't just distracting, it's costly. Think of the leaders you admire. Are they the ones who panic in crisis? Or are they the ones who pause, assess the facts, and respond with poise? Stoic leadership isn't about appearing cold. It's about staying grounded when others can't. When the pressure is on, when deadlines loom, when conflict rises, the one who stays centered becomes the one people trust, because composure creates clarity, and clarity leads to better decisions. You stop reacting to office drama. You stop being triggered by every email or comment. You start thinking 3 steps ahead, strategically, calmly. And over time, that steadiness becomes your reputation. You become known as the person who doesn't fold under fire, the one who can see through the noise and focus on what truly matters. In a world that often rewards quick wins and loud voices, Stoicism offers something rare: the quiet power of long-term respect. 3. Resilience and mental health, a Stoic shield. Now let's talk about the one benefit that touches every part of life: your mental health. We live in a time of constant stimulation, endless comparison, and invisible pressure. No wonder anxiety and burnout are at all-time highs. But here's what the Stoics figured out centuries ago. Most of our suffering doesn't come from events themselves. It comes from our interpretation of them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Read that again, slowly. What if your stress didn't control you anymore? What if you could train your mind to focus only on what's within your control? That's the essence of Stoic mental toughness. It's not about suppressing emotions. It's about choosing which emotions to feed. When you live by Stoic principles, you begin to notice. You bounce back faster from disappointments. You spend less time overthinking. You stop trying to control things that were never yours to control in the first place. The result? Your mind becomes lighter. Your body breathes easier. Your sleep deepens. You no longer carry the weight of other people's chaos. You begin to live from a place of quiet strength. And that is where healing begins, not from escaping life, but from facing it with a calm and courageous heart. So ask yourself now, what kind of life do I want to build? One ruled by emotional turbulence, or one grounded in wisdom, composure, and purpose? You don't need to be a philosopher or a monk to walk this path. You just need a willingness to practice, one moment at a time. Because over time, with gentle repetition, these habits don't just improve your reactions. They elevate your entire life. Your relationships become richer. Your work becomes more meaningful. Your mind becomes a place of safety, not sabotage. It's the quiet miracle of Stoicism in real life. And it all starts with a breath, a pause, and a choice. Part 4. Real-life application scenarios. How Stoicism comes alive in everyday life. Let's get honest for a moment. It's one thing to talk about emotional discipline, inner calm, and Stoic philosophy in theory. But what happens when life tests you in practice? Not in a meditation room, not when things are quiet and under control, but in the real world, when someone insults you unfairly, when your loved ones push every emotional button you have, when your plans fall apart, when grief knocks the wind out of you. That's where the Stoic path either becomes real or collapses. And that's what today's about. Not perfection, not philosophy for the sake of sounding wise, but application. How you walk with clarity when the road gets messy. Let's take this journey through 4 familiar areas of life and see how calm Stoic strength quietly changes everything. 1. At work, composure. Over ego, work is one of the most triggering environments for many people. Deadlines, office politics, passive-aggressive emails, unfair evaluations. You know the drill. Now imagine this scenario. You're sitting in a meeting and someone criticizes your work publicly. It's not constructive, it's unfair, maybe even humiliating. The ego wants to lash out. Your mind races. That's not true, I worked hard. This isn't fair. You feel the heat rising in your chest, but then you remember your practice. You pause, you breathe. You create space between the insult and your instinct. And in that space you ask, is this about truths or about pride? Can I use this moment to grow instead of defend? Maybe later you go back and ask calmly for feedback. Maybe you reflect on what's useful and release what's not. Maybe you don't need to react at all. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change, for it is the truth I seek." That's not weakness. That's strength, the kind that earns respect silently over time. In a world of noise, composure speaks louder than defense. 2. In family, choosing to listen, not explode. Now let's step into a more personal space. Family. Nothing reveals our triggers more than those closest to us. Old patterns, childhood wounds, generational misunderstandings, one wrong tone from a parent or a dismissive phrase from a sibling, and suddenly you're 12 years old again, emotionally hijacked. It's normal, but it's not inevitable. The Stoics teach us that emotional maturity isn't about not feeling. It's about recognizing what's yours and what's just conditioning. So next time a family member sparks frustration, try this. Instead of reacting, pause. Don't try to win the argument. Ask yourself, can I respond with curiosity instead of judgment? What is this person really needing right now? Often when people speak harshly, they're actually hurting. Listening, not agreeing, just listening, can change the dynamic completely. And even if they don't change, you do. You stop bleeding energy into every emotional tug of war. You begin to set calm boundaries instead of emotional ultimatums. Over time, your stillness becomes the stable ground others learn to trust or walk away from. Either way, you win your peace. 3. In health, discipline as daily kindness. Let's move into a quieter battlefield, your daily habits. We don't talk enough about how emotional regulation is deeply connected to physical health. Your diet, your sleep, your exercise, your scrolling habits. How many times have you reached for a sugar high or a distraction just to escape a feeling? We all have. But here's the reframe Stoicism offers. Discipline isn't punishment. It's an act of self-respect. Waking up early to move your body, that's not rigidity. That's honoring your future self. Skipping the junk food not because you can't have it, but because you deserve to feel clear, not sluggish. That's not restriction. That's kindness. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And so much of our self-sabotage begins in the mind. But when you ground yourself in virtue-driven habits, you start feeling better. You begin to trust your own follow-through. And that builds confidence, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that says, I can take care of myself even when it's hard. That's real power. 4. In crisis, finding grace in chaos. Finally, the ultimate test: crisis, loss, heartbreak, illness, job collapse. The moments we never saw coming. No Stoic teaching can take away the pain, but it can give you a way to hold it. When everything falls apart, the reactive mind wants to scream, "Why me?" The Stoic mind doesn't avoid grief. It walks with it. It asks, what can I still control in this moment? How can I suffer with dignity, not despair? What lesson might be hidden inside this loss? This is where Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes spiritual courage. You stop resisting the storm and start becoming the stillness within it. And that is when healing begins. Not because you force it, but because you've learned to stay open even when it hurts. That's a different kind of freedom, one the world can't give or take away. So let me leave you with this. The real Stoic isn't someone who quotes Marcus Aurelius on Instagram. It's the person who, when life gets hard, shows up differently, with presence, with patience, with quiet power. Whether at work, at home, in your body, or through heartbreak, Stoicism isn't just a theory. It's a way of walking through the fire without being burned. And it all begins with one small, powerful question. What kind of person do I want to be, even now? Part 5, The Science Behind Stoic Practices, Why This Ancient Wisdom Actually Works. Have you ever wondered why some people seem emotionally steady no matter what life throws at them? It's not that they don't feel anger, anxiety, or sadness. It's that over time, they've built an internal framework that helps them respond, not just react. And here's the beautiful part. This isn't just philosophy. There's actual science behind why Stoic practices work. So let's explore what happens inside your brain and your life when you commit to this ancient path of emotional mastery. 1. Regulating emotions improves your mental health. We live in a world full of noise, notifications, stressors, expectations, and without realizing it, many of us are emotionally reactive by default. But research shows that the ability to regulate your emotions is one of the most powerful predictors of long-term mental well-being. In fact, people who consistently practice emotional regulation report lower levels of anxiety, reduced depression, and higher life satisfaction. So what does emotional regulation actually mean? It's the skill of recognizing what you feel, understanding where it comes from, and choosing how you want to respond. It's not about denying emotions, but about meeting them with awareness. And this is exactly what Stoicism teaches. When Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He's not just being poetic, he's outlining a psychological truth. 2. How Stoic habits train your brain. Literally. Let's take it a step deeper. What's really going on inside your brain when you pause before reacting, when you reframe a negative thought, when you align your decisions with your values? You're activating the prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making center of your brain. At the same time, you're quieting the amygdala, the part responsible for fear, impulsiveness, and emotional hijacking. That moment of pause, the breath before you speak, the silence before you lash out, it's not weakness, it's neurological strength. This is why Stoic practices like mindfulness, journaling, or even silently asking, "Is this within my control?" can actually reshape the way your brain processes stress. You're rewiring your system to be less reactive and more thoughtful. Science calls it top-down regulation. The Stoics simply called it wisdom. 3. The power of neuroplasticity. Your brain changes with practice. Here's where it gets really encouraging. Your brain is not fixed. You're not stuck with the wiring you inherited. Thanks to neuroplasticity, your brain can grow and change with repeated practice. What does that mean for us? It means every time you practice a Stoic technique, whether it's reframing your thinking, pausing before reacting, journaling your emotions, or reminding yourself of what's in your control, you're literally strengthening new neural pathways. Over time, emotional clarity becomes more automatic. Calm becomes your baseline. You don't have to force it. It becomes part of who you are. Imagine going from reacting with frustration or panic to handling life's chaos with quiet resolve. That's not magic. That's practice. 4. Why repetition and intention matter. You might be thinking, okay, I get the science, but how do I make this last? This is where behavioral science enters. Studies in psychology and neuroscience agree. Repetition plus intention equals transformation. You can't just read about Stoicism once and expect deep change, but if you build simple, intentional habits around it, change becomes inevitable. That might mean starting your day with a single Stoic reflection, or ending your evening by asking, where did I overreact today, and how could I respond better tomorrow? These small acts create what behavioral psychologists call identity-based habits. You're not just doing the practice, you're becoming the person who lives it. And the brain loves identity-based habits because they stick. They form part of your self-image. And once that shifts, behavior naturally follows. Bringing it all together. So let's step back and reflect. Why does Stoicism work? Not just spiritually, but scientifically. Because it's not about suppressing emotion. It's about creating a deep internal structure, a mental gym, if you will, where you train clarity, compassion, and courage day by day. Your emotional life becomes something you can navigate, not something that controls you. And over time, the results are both visible and invisible. You react less. You think more clearly. You hold your ground with quiet dignity. And not only do you feel better, but those around you feel it too. Because calm is contagious. In the end, it's not about becoming some perfect version of a Stoic philosopher. It's about knowing that when life gets loud, you don't have to be. When storms come, you've built shelter from within. And maybe that's the most powerful transformation of all. Not that you changed the world, but that you changed how you meet it. So if you're wondering whether this path is worth it, science says yes. Philosophy says yes. And your future self is quietly waiting, hoping you'll say yes too. Part 6:10. Daily Stoic Habits to Master Your Emotions. If you've ever told yourself, I want to stay calm, but my emotions take over too fast, then this part is for you. The truth is, emotional mastery is not a gift some people are born with. It's a daily practice, a way of living that is trained, not wished into existence. The Stoics didn't promise that we'd never feel anger, sadness, or fear. What they offered was a path to meet those emotions with grace, strength, and wisdom. So today I want to share with you 10 practical Stoic habits, simple things you can do each day to train your emotional resilience. No philosophy degree required, just your willingness to show up with presence and intention. Let's begin. 1. Mindfulness. Anchor yourself in the present. The first habit is to become more present, to actually notice where your mind is, moment by moment. That might sound obvious, but think about it. How often are we lost in thoughts about the past or the future? The Stoics practice something very close to what we now call mindfulness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, confine yourself to the present. You don't need a meditation app to do this. You just need a moment of stillness, a breath, an awareness of your body, your surroundings, your emotional state. Even 5 minutes of morning mindfulness, eyes closed, breath steady, can quiet the emotional storms before they begin. 2. Journaling. Reflect to grow. The second habit is journaling, not the performative kind, but honest, private reflection. What triggered you today? Where did you act from fear instead of courage? What did you do well? Seneca advised us to examine our day each night like a wise teacher reviewing a student's work. And when you write, not type but write, your thoughts become clearer. You see patterns. You see growth. You see where your work lies. 3. Visualization. Rehearse your calm. Here's a habit not often talked about. Visualization. Before your day begins, imagine something that might normally frustrate you. A rude colleague, traffic, a stressful phone call. And now mentally rehearse responding calmly. Feel the discomfort and still choose poise. Just like athletes visualize performance, Stoics visualize virtue in action. This primes your brain to handle real stress with grace. 4. Daily intention. Choose your virtue. Every morning ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? And pick a virtue, just one. Courage, patience, humility, wisdom. Let that be your anchor for the day. The Stoics believed in living with intention, not automation. Your emotional life becomes easier to manage when your values lead the way. 5. Gratitude practice. End the day in stillness. Before you sleep, write down 3 things you're grateful for, even on hard days, especially on hard days. Gratitude softens the edges of emotional pain. It doesn't deny hardship, it grounds you in perspective. The Stoics didn't chase happiness, they practiced appreciation for what already is. 6. Exposure to discomfort. Train your composure. Growth doesn't come from comfort, and emotional strength is built in discomfort. Take cold showers, skip a meal, go a day without checking your phone, hold silence in a tough conversation. These small challenges build your tolerance for distress. And when you face real emotional turmoil, you're already trained. Epictetus said, difficulties show men what they are, so train with intention. 7. Micro decisions strengthen your discipline. Every day we make hundreds of tiny decisions. What to eat, when to speak, whether to scroll or reflect. These micro decisions are your emotional gym. Choose water over sugar, silence over impulse, stillness over distraction. Every small win is a signal to your mind, I am in control. And over time, that confidence becomes emotional stability. 8. Emotion-action split. Create the sacred pause. This is one of the most powerful Stoic habits. Don't act at the speed of emotion. When something triggers you, pause. Name the emotion, feel it fully, then choose your response. That small pause is where your power lives. Between emotion and action, there's space. And in that space, you find freedom. 9. Weekly feedback loop. Don't grow alone. Every week, ask someone you trust. How did I handle myself this week? Get honest input, not flattery. We often think we're calm when we're just silent. Or we think we're composed, but others feel tension from us. The Stoics welcome feedback, not for ego, but for truth. Growth requires reflection and perspective. 10. Daily reading. Nourish the mind. Lastly, read something every day that reminds you who you want to be. It could be a passage from Marcus Aurelius, a few lines from Seneca, or even a modern book on Stoicism or psychology. Let your mind marinate in timeless wisdom, because what you feed your mind shapes your emotions. And if you nourish your mind with clarity, discipline, and virtue, you'll feel your emotional life shift, quietly but powerfully. The real outcome. These habits may seem small, but practiced consistently, they become your foundation. Over time, you don't just react better, you live better, more grounded, more awake, more at peace. You become someone who doesn't just talk about emotional mastery, you embody it, and that changes everything. A life of rational power and purpose. So let's come back to the core question. What kind of life are you building? One ruled by emotional chaos, or one guided by calm clarity? If you've come this far, you already know the answer your heart longs for. And the beauty of Stoicism is, it doesn't demand perfection. It invites practice. Quiet, consistent, intentional practice. Every time you pause instead of react, every time you choose perspective over panic, every time you anchor yourself in a virtue instead of a vice, you're not just managing emotions, you're shaping your character. This is what the Stoics meant by true freedom. Not freedom from problems, but freedom within them. Freedom to choose your response, even when life feels unfair. Freedom to remain calm in a storm, not because the storm is gone, but because you are steady. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man of his time, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength isn't loud. It doesn't always look impressive on the surface, but inside, it feels like peace. It feels like integrity. And over time, it builds a life that is not just successful, but deeply meaningful. So here's the invitation. Start small. Start today. Maybe with just one breath before you speak, or one page of reflection before bed. Maybe it's the choice to respond with kindness when anger would be easier. These choices compound. These habits reshape who you become, not overnight, but inevitably, if you stay the course. Because at its heart, Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions, it's about transforming them into wisdom, into patience, into strength. And that is how you quietly become unstoppable. Let me leave you with one final thought. Every day is a new opportunity to return to what matters, to choose reason over reaction, to live not just emotionally, but intentionally. And when you do, you don't just feel better, you live better, more grounded, more clear, more alive. If this message spoke to you, share it, not for attention, but as a quiet reminder. We all have the power to live with depth, presence, and strength. The Stoic doesn't run from emotions. He walks through them, aware, anchored, and free.